Hello, Guy LePage here, Executive Director of Conico Limited. We're an ASX-listed mineral explorer. I'm a geologist by background. I'll be talking about our projects in Western Australia, which is the Mount Thirsty joint venture, and also Greenland, East Greenland, which is our second year of exploration there. And drilling commenced in June, and we'll be winding up soon, so I'll look forward to giving an update.
Well, Guy, lovely to meet you. We've not met or spoken before. We've been dealing with Tom previously and talking specifically about Greenland, and I think Mount Thirsty was but a mere hope and a dream. But things have taken off there. So what's going on?
That's right. Well, we were, to be honest with you, we were getting ready to look at spinning out the oxide resources, which we have in joint venture with Greenstone Resources. But our northern neighbour, Galileo Mining, had a impressive intercept over 20 metres of platinum group elements, copper and nickel and rhodium and gold at about 140 metres depth, but it was found to be trending right onto our tenement. So we very quickly diverted some of our exploration budget to doing a review and drilling, which is ongoing at the moment.
Right. Okay. And there's a 50-50 joint venture with Greenstone, as I understand it. Are you, I mean, are you carried for that, or do you need to actually contribute? And if so, in what ratio?
It's 50-50, so we're contributing. The joint venture's been alive since 2008. But, you know, we are looking to consolidate at some point. I think we've said that in the public domain a number of times. So I'm hoping the success at Mount Thirsty, you know, when we get the assays in the next few weeks, will give us a bit of a prompt to fast track a consolidation of the tenements there.
Right, consolidation of the tenements. So what does the current structure look like then in terms of?
Well, we're 50-50 on the Mount Thirsty tenement, and that tenement adjoins Galileo Mining to the south, where they've had that series of pretty impressive intercepts. So what that would look like would be potentially a spin out or a merger. And again, you know, that hasn't been decided, but, you know, we have hinted at that in our quarterly reports. And that would bring together the oxide resources and hopefully, if we're lucky enough, the hard rock resources containing the PGE mineralisation.
Right, okay, so it's 50-50 in terms of the tenement, 50-50 in terms of the valuation,
yeah,
and 50-50 in terms of the funding. Okay, honestly, just want to be clear. Sometimes it's, you know, it can get a little bit creative there.
Yeah.
So you said that given the success there with Galileo next door, and you know what you've seen there, you would look to allocate more capital to this going forward. But what do you know today in terms of what you've got, what Galileo have got, and maybe how you come about this? Because is there a conversation with Galileo to say, wouldn't this make more sense to come together?
Well, I think there would be. What we know is that Galileo have got reasonably consistent results 200 metres to the north of our boundary. They're getting widths of between 15 and 20 metres at equivalent of somewhere between around about that 3 gram gold equivalent. But nice widths, it seems to be quite consistent. And that mineralisation trends onto our ground at a very shallow dip. So we have hit that mineralisation in about 6 of our holes so far, but previous drilling about 15 years ago did hit that same prospective horizon further south, but we never assayed for it. So we're reasonably confident that the horizon extends for well over 500 metres in strike onto our ground, considerably more than that, I suspect. What we don't know is whether it's carrying the same tenor of mineralisation and grade that Galileo is seeing.
Okay. Maybe I'll come back to that. I've got to ask a question with regards to the recent correction. How does a company get it so wrong? I mean, have you changed the way that you? Well, why was the need to put out that level of correction?
Well, I think it was just a calculation error. It looked like someone, I think what had happened in practice is someone had finished the announcement, gone to get a coffee and forgot to correct it, and it arrived on my desk. I'm not saying I was late at the cigar lounge the night before, but somehow it slipped through the cracks. But I think, look, the reality is it hasn't changed anything. We're getting, 15, 20, 25 metres of that prospective horizon. We're seeing the same sulfides. What the market really wants to see is some assays, and that's coming down the pipe in a couple of weeks.
Right. Okay. And how much is going to be coming down the line in a couple of weeks?
Well, we'll probably release batches of 2 to 3 holes at a time. So I'm hoping the first, if we get a cracking result, obviously we might have to put out the first hole we get, but we're hoping to put out batches of maybe 2 or 3 holes, and we're sort of fast tracking them through the lab. And that's really going to be the acid test of whether we're going to, 1 or 2 cents or 7 to 10 cents, I guess.
Right. And do you think people are more excited? Well, what do you think people are excited about in terms of the commodity? I mean, PGEs is hard to understand, and it's hard to actually put a package together which actually is commercial. So what do you think people are looking to and saying, well, there's the future of the company?
Well, I think Galileo, whether they're right or wrong, were comparing what they've seen to Platte Reefs, which is 700 million tonne resource, one of the largest deposits in the world. It's a potential. It's very early days. We're not necessarily saying that it is something similar, but so far we've seen good continuity over maybe, over 500 metres. So there is some hope there. Palladium's been in favour. The auto industry is a heavy user of palladium. The market, I don't think, has worked out how to value PGEs, and you've seen some very high valuations of the likes of Chalice, which I sort of wonder if, how the market comes to that understanding. A lot of them are quite low grade. I talk to wholesale retail investors, institutions, and I find their knowledge wanting, I think is probably the best way to put it. So I think it's got a mystique about it, and the valuations are very high, so I won't make any secret of that. But, that's a benefit to Conico shareholders at the moment.
Yeah, it is. And like I say, we're way off the point where you need to kind of justify or backfill those sorts of valuations that we're seeing elsewhere. So let's just stick with the good stuff right now. So in terms of rethinking the budget, you say you've moved some money over to look at Mount Thirsty because it's getting a bit more of a viewing, a bit more attention to it. So how much money have you got at the moment, and what's the allocation that you decided on?
We've got I probably can't disclose the exact amount, but I can say this: the capital raising, we had about 6 million at the end of the capital raising, going back about 3 weeks. Now that would take us through to the end of the year, probably maybe February, with what was budgeted for Greenland, which is 10,000 metres, and Mount Thirsty, which is about 700,000. Right now, we've underperformed in terms of meterage in Greenland to the tune of about 5,000 metres, so that's probably over 1.5 million. So I suspect our Mount Thirsty budget will probably come in somewhere between 1.2 and 1.5 up until February, March next year. So that would probably see us do around about 10,000 metres at Mount Thirsty.
Okay, and you think that's the best bang for your buck there? In fact, let me before I go there, you said you underperformed, so that doesn't sound like it was a conscious decision. It sounds like there were issues in Greenland. And if so, what were they?
Well, I think to be fair, the drilling meterage, the logistics didn't go as well as we'd hoped. There were a few equipment failures. We did have a few issues with some of the contractor performance. Maybe it's a function of being too aggressive in Greenland. It's a bit hard to know. Quite an ambitious program because we straddled Ryberg and Mastersvig. Having said that, we're hopefully getting some numbers out of Ryberg and certainly out of Mastersvig. So, hopefully in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll start to get some numbers back. But it was a little bit disappointing.
Well, look, tell me about this one because, small companies have got to be really smart with their money. You've got to be really efficient with your money, right? And you come in, you're at the helm now. We were speaking with Tom before. You were there. There's a few new faces around. How are you going through a process of evaluating what you've got and how you deal with it? Because Greenland just wasn't, for all the narrative in the market, the Greenland projects are not getting the due love and attention in the equities side of things, right? So
No.
you've got to say, how do I play this? Do I use someone else's balance sheet? Do we farm this out? Do we get carried? Do we do that and focus on what seems to be flavor of the month? And maybe that's a danger, but focus on Australia. Nice jurisdiction, people understand it, and we're getting some great numbers here. So are you in a process? Have you made a decision? Where's this thing going?
Well, that's the $1 million, or I'd say for Greenland, the $50 million question. Look, Greenland has, it's big scale, big target, big budget. If you don't find anything, it's just big budget. And last year we didn't really find anything of commercial interest. We had a couple of sniffs. We had a meter at 40 grams gold, but people aren't interested in Greenland for gold. They want the big nickel. Norilsk, they want Voisey Bay, they want something big. So that's, unless we find something that points to that, we're probably more aligned to getting a partner in at some point, because, we have thrown a fair bit of money at it. Mastersvig is probably easier to manage. The logistics are a lot easier. It's easy to get around. We've got a lot of walk-up targets. I'm hoping we've got some good hits there this year. So we'll be weighing that up in November, December. But, we can't, we need some success. And we're not talking about, a couple of metre intersections at 0.2 copper. We'd need something fairly significant to give the market confidence to give us another $7-8 million next year.
See, that's interesting. So you're not viewing Greenland as a whole. You're saying that Ryberg and Mastersvig can be, viewed as separate assets and potentially dealt with separately. Yeah. As an option for you, or you may choose to offload both and focus.
Well, we could joint venture one. We could spin the zinc copper out at Mastersvig. We could joint venture the whole package, or if we had a sniff at Ryberg this year, we could potentially go back in. But fortunately, we've got a few tailwinds at Mount Thirsty, so we are able to raise money at higher prices, but the market's not that stupid. They're not just going to keep throwing money at Greenland unless we can deliver something.
Right, and maybe some of the bigger balance sheet might be able to do a better job at it if you can get carried on that, or at least create some value for your shareholders on that one. And that's fair enough. That happens all the time. Okay, so can I just ask about you though? Because obviously you go at the helm. What's your background? Talk about being a geo, but what have you done that's relevant to what you're trying to do now?
In Greenland,
anywhere. I'm talking one, running a company, and two, making the sorts of decisions which are going to get this company moving. It needs a step change, doesn't it?
Yeah, I worked for about 10 years as an exploration mining geologist in Australia, Canada, and the US. Was a mining analyst, corporate advisor, and been on public company boards for over 20 years. So I'm now sort of like a part-time executive. Reasonably hands-on, trying to sort of manage budgets, the media, promotion, management. So it's a bit of a sort of multitasking at the moment, and making a lot of decisions as well. We're doing everything, up to Mount Thirsty, looking at the drilling, doing site clearances with the Aboriginals. So it's been pretty full on.
It has. Okay, so you're having to do a little bit of everything. So apart from sort of working out what's going on with the portfolio, for you, talking to the market is going to be important. Do you think that, given recent events with Galileo and what you're doing at Mount Thirsty, are the institutions paying just that little bit more attention to you at the moment, or are you finding it still a little bit tough out there in the markets?
Well, we're getting a lot of attention. And that attention will either be for the right reason or the wrong reason in about 2 weeks. So, I could have a very small pool of friends in November, or I could have a lot more. So it really, what the market is looking for is results, because that's all they care about. And look, I'm reasonably confident. I can't speak for Greenland because a lot of the mineralisation is not visual. A lot of the stuff there could be carrying grade. We don't know. We've got a head start at Mount Thirsty. We know what the grades are at Galileo. It is only a couple of 100 metres away, and it looks the same. it's not all going to be high grade or similar grade, but we would be pretty disappointed if we came away empty-handed.
Right. Okay. And so I notice you're sort of 2.9% shareholder, it says here. Have you put money into this thing? So how long have you been involved with this? Either
too long.
As you are now? Pretty long, right.
Too long. 2008.
Oh, you've been since the beginning in one way or the other. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so we've had a shovel putting money in for quite a while. I don't know how much, but and look, I think we're close to getting a result. So hopefully it's going to be worthwhile.
Right. Okay. So 2 weeks time, I guess, is the moment we're all looking forward to.
Yeah.
And in terms of giving guidance as to how you're kind of treating the rest of the portfolio as well, is that a end of the year decision or is that a now decision?
Well, I think it's November, December decision for Greenland. And look, I think Thomas and the crew in Greenland are realistic. I mean, you get a couple of shots at these things. After that, you need to start delivering. So we'll see where that washes up. In terms of the decision on Mount Thirsty, if we get some reasonable results, I think that drilling program will just keep going, until we run out of targets.
And do you think, just in terms of Greenland, I mean, and I don't know how much you know, but given you've been involved for a long time, I would hope you'd have an answer to this, which is Greenland has had some issues with the government there. It's also had a lot of excitement around the potential of Greenland.
Yeah.
But is anyone actually doing anything in Greenland which could be, qualified as a success so far? Or do we need some big money to go in and sort of really do a proper job?
Well, it's ever since the change in the government going back about 18 months and the anti-sort of uranium policy, which really brought Greenland Minerals to a grinding halt, that's sort of taken the shine off Greenland. There hasn't been a lot of activity on the east coast where we're operating. There has been some activity, obviously Ironbark up at Citronen right up the north. There's been a bit of gold exploration. There has been some more mineral sands exploration on the west coast near Nuuk. It's been pretty thin on the ground. Greenland hasn't been flavour of the month. I think it's got a long way to sort of rebuild investor confidence. I noticed Greenland Minerals were rattling the sabre about, litigating against the Greenland government. So it does need a bit of good news. And, maybe it needs the Rios and Tex and those sort of companies to come in and give it a big splash. But I think they're watching and waiting to see what happens. What I don't want to see is the anti-uranium sentiment spill over to an anti-mining sentiment, which it hasn't, but that's obviously what people are concerned about.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I think once you start talking about litigating governments, you're in a whole world of hurt and pain and cost.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a no-win situation.
No-win situation, but I think what has changed is the sort of sentiment and the narrative around uranium at the moment. I think most governments are now pro. It's amazing what happens when costs go up. So the energy security side of things may change that, but again, we're talking time, and I guess that's part of the variables that you're going to be considering at the end of this year, whether you hang on to your projects or not. Hey, well, look, Guy, nice introduction to you. First of all, really appreciate your frank opinions on these things, quite refreshingly honest. Also, great to hear about what's going on in Western Australia with Mount Thirsty. And perhaps if things go well in the next couple of weeks, you come back on and let us know how, what you think. Yeah,
you'll either see me running for the hills or on the phone talking to you. So it'll be A or B.
Excellent. Well, I hope it's coming back and talking to us. Guy, you're a star. Thanks for coming on today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matthew. Been a pleasure.